Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the North Kesteven series. This is a large Lincolnshire district centred around the town of Sleaford. There's 75 parishes here, so let's take a look at one of them. Welcome back to North Kesteven, everybody. Now, do you remember last week's Harmston episode where I told you that until I covered that, Harmston had passed me by? It's a village I didn't really know. The same goes for this one. I'm beginning this episode at its playing field and what I think is its village hall, the building you can kind of see in shot right now. These belong to the parish of Coleby. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Here we go again, folks, with the next village to the south along the Lincoln Cliff. This is Coleby, perhaps my favourite village so far in North Kesteven. I reckon you'll all love this one for a lot of reasons. Coleby can trace its history all the way back to the Domesday Book, which recorded a church and a priest. The modern church still has some Saxon features, including a keyhole window in the south side of the tower and a slit window in the north side. Always predominantly an agricultural settlement, Coleby is still surrounded by farmland today. The parish was enclosed in 1760 when the medieval open field system was exchanged for individual farms. For centuries, most of Coleby's male population worked on those farms or on farms in neighbouring parishes. Today, only a few Coleby people are engaged in agriculture, but many of the old farmhouses and farmworkers' cottages still stand. As well as farming, in the mid-1800s there was a lot of iron mining around Coleby. There's a property here named the Old House, which has a 17th century gabled wing which abuts the high street. Standout features in this village include Coleby Hall, the 18th century wellheads, the Tempest pub, and the brilliant views from the Lincoln Cliff. It's time for another walk around another beautiful Lincolnshire village. Our journey around Coleby starts at the playing field located to the east of the village on the road to the A607. The village hall is here as well, the base of a thriving village community which hosts a wide variety of community events. These include such things as an annual harvest ball and Coleby's ever popular car boot sales. Here's a playground too. The village hall is also the meeting place for the parish council and it can be found off this street, Rectory Road. Here is the rectory, which some folk know as the vicarage. It's early 19th century and it's Grade 2 listed. Most of Coleby's property is built of the local limestone. There are modern side streets though, like for example Coronation Crescent. There's a parish notice board here. Let's get Coleby marked off that North Kesteven list. 71 to go. Okay, so on the green here at Coronation Crescent, there's a little pillar which has got this map on it, and it shows you the village and some of the things around it that we will potentially see on this walk. I don't think we'll see it all, but we'll see most of it. Certainly one of the things we definitely will see is All Saints Church. I'm heading towards that in a moment. I'm currently here, and my route is really simple. It's just a simple loop around the village. There's a road there. It's not very clear, but there is a road there. So it's a simple circular walk. And then out here, there's an RAF base, which is where I'll be ending this episode. It'll actually straddle the boundary between this one and the next one, so it'll sort of be covered in both episodes, I suppose. But yeah, here's some of the things you can see around Coleby, and at the top there's a bit of history about the name and some other bits and bobs. If you want to pause the video at this point to read that, feel free. Next is the school. This was built in 1854 and later enlarged. Still going strong, it caters for less than 100 pupils. That brings us to the church, which is dedicated to All Saints. This has a tower base that dates from Saxon times. The top of the tower was built in the early 15th century. In the churchyard, there's the village's war memorial. It's a Grade 1 listed building and has one of the tallest spires in Lincolnshire. The church was extensively restored in 1900. Inside, its pews are not the original. They came from a former church in the West Lindsey village of Hackthorne. Around the back of the church is a cemetery. These gates, built for Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, have a tale to tell. This plaque tells us they were originally sited at the Methodist Chapel. When it closed in 1997, they were relocated here. Oh, and how about this for unique? The church spire has upon it aircraft landing lights for the nearby RAF Waddington Air Base. Next is the entrance to Coleby Hall, which was erected in 1628 on the foundations of an older building named North Hall. Okay, once you get past the church and the entrance to Coleby Hall, you're then faced with this pinkish coloured building. I think this is an old pub, potentially, and the reason I'm saying that is because if you look to your left here, you can see a car park that's currently undergoing some kind of renovation or something. I reckon this used to be an inn, and it's no longer an inn. There is a lamp here above this door. Now this might give us a clue, actually. Let's see, what have we got? Well, that says pubmaster, so it's definitely a pub. Absolutely, this used to be a pub. No idea what name it is, but you never know. I might have found that in my research. Just before that, let's discuss Coleby Hall a bit more. It's a Grade 2 listed country house which stands in a park around 50 acres big. It's a gabled house constructed in coursed rubble and ashlar with a red-tiled ridged roof. It was built for Sir William Lister of Rippingale, the father of Thomas Lister, who was the MP appointed as a judge at the trial of Charles I. The hall descended via Thomas Lister to his great-niece, Frances Lister, in 1734, the wife of Thomas Scrope. Scrope altered and further extended the hall, and in 1762 built in the grounds a folly of a temple to Romulus and Remus and a gateway to the hall as an imitation ruined Roman arch. The arch was based on Newport Arch in Lincoln. Ownership passed to the Tempest family in 1856, who made major alterations to the hall and estate. It was later bought by the Folkes family, remaining in their possession until 1981, aside from a brief spell when it was requisitioned by the army during World War II. Back to the walk, and it turns out I was right. This was a pub and it was called the Bell, one of two pubs within Coleby. Have you noticed how similarly Coleby is laid out to Harmston and Waddington? It's practically the same. That's by design, because once again this is a village originally built around a spring on the Lincoln Cliff. Speaking of which, you knew this was coming, didn't you? Once again, the cliff villages don't disappoint when it comes to a vista. Of all the villages along the cliff, I reckon Coleby's view could well be the best. I wouldn't mind waking up to this every day. On a clear day like this, you can see far into the distance through Nottinghamshire, into Derbyshire and beyond. Now for Church Lane, another narrow street lined with lovely old stone cottages, reflecting Coleby's agricultural past. I particularly like this house with the greenery on its walls. The church bells started to ring in the background here too. According to the sign on its wall, the stone-built property next door is the former blacksmith's cottage. Church Lane offers us a look at All Saints again, this time from the other side. You've got to admit, it's spectacular. And then we turn onto the high street where the old stone buildings start to intertwine with newer brick ones. Okay, now we're on the high street and we're entering the last part of the walk. It's a very small place, this. What this does is it forms a loop around the southern section of the village and will take us back up towards the school and the playing field where we began. We've already seen one of Coleby's pubs, but it's closed. Let's have an open one then, shall we? Time for the Tempest. Originally an alehouse known as the Board, it eventually became a licensed inn called the Brewer's Arms. In 1888, it was renamed the Tempest Arms in deference to the Tempest family, owners of the Coleby estate. Here's the former Methodist chapel on the corner of Hill Rise. This closed in 1997, as we already learned earlier. Built in 1835, it was originally a Wesleyan chapel. Coleby's only other chapel is Roman Catholic, located at Coleby Hall. Then we come to the village green, and this one has two very unusual features upon it, both to do with water. They are 18th century wellheads. The wells beneath are ancient, but little is recorded of their use until a pump was added. That was in 1896. They were deepened in 1905, and it wasn't until 1932 that piped water came to the village. Lastly, we make our way up Blind Lane as we head for the end. This is just a collection of idyllic houses and cottages. I think that's the best way to sum Coleby up. Quiet and out of the way, but very, very pretty and sought after too. And that brings us back to Rectory Road, completing the circuit of this beautiful village on the Lincoln Cliff. And this should be pretty familiar. We're back to Coronation Crescent and the small green where we read a bit of history about the village. Now, we're not quite done with Coleby just yet, because we now have to go out onto Coleby Heath, where we're going to find RAF Coleby Grange, which is, as I said earlier, on the border between Coleby and Boothby Graffoe. Okay, so here we are then at the former RAF Coleby Grange, and as you can see, it's reverted now into agricultural use. And as I said before, this is on the boundary between Coleby and Boothby Graffoe. I've actually come a long way out of Coleby here. The road you can see in the distance, that's the A15. So it's a long way to the east. It's right on the eastern boundary of these two parishes. And if you squint, you might just be able to see the old control tower. It's there. It's a long way off in the distance. There is a way to get to that, but I think you have to have permission to actually access it. You can't just walk through these gates, for example, because as you can see, these are locked. I think there's some kind of access point behind those houses in the distance. So there's the control tower anyway, and this is the former RAF Coleby Grange. And I will be talking about this again in next week's Boothby Graffoe episode, because it will begin with a special section all about this airfield. For now though, that's been the parish of Coleby, and I do hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.